All right, Chapter 19, Operating Practices, Inspection Principles, and Guidance. Chapter 9, Operating Practices, Inspection Principle, Guidance, FRA Geometry, and Cars Operational Practice. Inspectors are generally not involved in the operation of FRA or A-tip cars. When the movement of these cars will require the involvement of the OP inspector, the inspector will be governed by the instructions for the regional managers, and the instruction will be found on the FRA website noted below the atipfra.gov index. Switching Operational Fatality Analysis, or SOFA, reference for inspection. 1998, high number of the railroad operating employee fatalities had been occurring each year for some time, promptly from prompt formation of impartial working group to be study program to study the problem. The work group is referred to as SOFA Working Group, or Switch Operation Fatality Working Group. The members included were the representative of the FRA, the Operational American Shortline Regional Railroad Association, American Railroads, Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineering Trainmen, United Train Union, the Department of Transportation Follow-Up, National Transportation Center. The SOFA Working Group has issued recommendations that all members agreed will reduce the injuries and fatalities in the railroad operation. Switching Operational Fatality Work Group was an accident database to reveal the trends and patterns that appeared to be causing the fatalities and results issued with the 5 recommendations below. This would be the reduce of fatalities in each year. The SOFA work group was developed in 11 more classifications that refer to special switching hazards, SSH, listed below. The special switch hazards classifications recognize some of the fatalities and involve elements from both the safeties, special switch hazards, and switch operational fatality analysis recommendations. All right, so for recommendations, some equipment before action is taken, some of the railroad refer to the red zone set and then safety of the briefing of the job, and when the project changes, job briefings communicate before the action is taken. Communicate properly in car including car counts, etc. Mentor allows experienced employees to perform safety safely. Alright, so for special switching hazards, the senior FRA managers have indicated that the special switching hazards are highly priority. Inspectors should be focused on all the items when on the railroad property. Close clearance struck by the mainline trains, employee tripping, slipping, or falling, free-rolling rail cars, unsecured cars, equipment struck by motor vehicle loading device, unexpected movement of the cars, environmental drugs, alcohol, and miscellaneous. 96 recording of SOFA operations on inspection reports. See also Chapter 3 of this manual. This requirement for the record of the SOFA recommendations is in the speed column has been discontinued. All deficiencies should be recorded on the inspection report while clearly examining the deficiencies in the narrative without the SOFA recommendations. Joint operational testing and inspections. Activity Code 217. Each inspector is expected to do an ample amount of the inspection regarding the operational testing. 217T. Reviewing the operational testing program data 217P and Part 225. The data must be routinely normalized and analyzed to prevent address and include increasing accidents and injuries in the inspector's territory. Pre or post planning. Pre and post planning. When planning a T17 inspection with the railroad officials or the group of the railroad officials, it is a good practice to arrange the operational testing session T17 well in advance with the cooperation of the railroad officials, directing the railroad managers exactly where and when and on what performing operational testing is not meaningful. The way to provide oversight, building a cooperative relationship. The FRA inspector should respect the fact that the railroad managers are also considered professionals, that they can provide guidance and suggestion or question the operational practice. The inspector must be cognizant with the railroad managers that have duties in addition with the operational testing with the FRA. Consequently, the operational inspector practice inspectors should be normally accept the railroad managers on the immediate stop when they are doing accompanying the FRA inspector's operational testing session of the requested operational practice inspector. Preparing a testing session using the activity code 217 pre and post 217T inspections. Prior to 217 testing, a operational inspection FRA requires operational practice to conduct an inspection review of the operational testing data using the activity code 217P and pre-217T. The FRA managers will review the inspection report to determine if the field inspectors are following these standards prior to the 217T. Equally as important as the pre-217T inspection is the post-217T inspection report. Again, using the activity code 217P, recorded in the same inspection report as the 217T and performed a few days after the 217 operational testing. Post-217P inspection, most documents in the inspection of the railroad manager's records recording the test occurred during the 217T operational testing. Recording the 217T inspection is an activity of the code. 217P is essential for the FRA's mission. Railroad operational testing must be recorded accurately so that the data will be analyzed is not skewed. Conducting the 217 testing session, inspectors shall not actively participate in the operating testing of the railroad employees in any of the manner, regardless whether the railroad managers are present. The inspector to accompany the railroad and to determine whether the conduction of operational testing is in compliance with the own railroad operational testing program on file with the FRA. Inspectors should remember that if it is responsible for the railroad to determine the employees are complying with the rails through the appropriate surveillance and performance testing, the FRA inspectors should charge with the monitoring the railroad manager's oversight responsibility. The FRA does not conduct any of the operational testing. It is important that the railroad manager perform the operational testing in accordance with their railroad's operational testing program on the file with the FRA. The test must be performed with the assistance of the FRA inspector. The inspector required to review the qualification training standards of the railroad manager who fails to perform the operational testing correctly. The inspector should consider recommending the civil penalties of the railroad manager do not comply with the railroad operational testing program. Inspectors should strongly consider the recommended individual liability enforcement action if the railroad owner knows it's falsified operational testing. Prior occupying the manager and operational testing session, the operational practice inspector should prepare and by doing the following: review the railroad current accident incidents, reportable, non-reportable, including the location and causes. 2. Review the railroad current and operational testing program on the file of the FRA, discussing the railroad manager's FRA safety harbor policy noted herein. Record inspection report the specific data 217P activity review prior to the accompanying of the manager of operational testing. 217T activity code reviewing in the detail operational testing for the least 3-month period. Reviewing the FRA inspectors regarding the territory of the railroad. 6. Narrowing the scope of the observation by identifying the railroad manager's strength and weakness. Perhaps requesting testing in the area regarding the areas of the inspector's concern. At the conclusion of the operational testing session, the railroad manager of the field inspector to determine whether the railroad manager conducted the test in accordance with the railroad written program, documenting his or her findings in the report. The inspection report should include the following: 1. Reference to debriefing at the end of the operational testing session, and the debriefing will include the exact detailed operational testing performed with identifying the numbers to be recorded with the operational testing record. A review of the railroad manager's record operational testing activity code 217P, in which the inspector has observed the railroad manager performing. This can be done on the current of the issue, current inspection reporting, the re-inspection report completed at the later date, which should include the proper file numbers referenced in the original inspection report. And 3. Any observation made by the inspector that are not included with the operational testing session, the observation should be clearly identified with the proper activity code. Include, but note that if 2 or more railroads are monitored during the testing session, a separate inspection must be completed for each of the railroad manager and railroad employee involved. 217T job briefing regarding safe harbor inspection responsibility, safeguard harbor guidance. Prior to the FRA accompanying with the operational testing session, the FRA inspector should brief the railroad managers regarding the FRA safe harbor policy. The brief should then be documented on the inspection report. The safety harbor policy requires non-compliance with the railroad operating safety rules. The federal regulation is not to be recorded on the inspection reports except as comment to the railroad. The comment must be indicated with the railroad manager properly handled with the incident according to with their own program. Inspectors of railroad managers, except for the conducted with the re-inspection and non-compliance with it found during the operational testing session, the inspector must include on their re-inspection report of the proper file number that contains the minimum of the inspector ID and the previous inspection report numbers. Application applicability of safety harbor policy during the 217 inspection. Activity code 217T is an operational practice inspector when the company accompanying the railroad manager who is performing the operational testing inspection pursuant to the program maintained under the Title 49 217.9. The program operational testing inspection record keeping program. The only purpose of the T17 T inspection is to determine whether the railroad manager has correctly implemented the operational testing program, whether the operational testing are properly performed, and whether the result, including all railroad operational safety rules and the FRA defects of their that are related to the incident performing the test, are identified with the properly recorded by the testing railroad manager. All right, considering the proper purpose of the T17 inspection, the counterproductive of the violation with non-compliance with federal railroad regulation is observed with the T17 inspection activity provided with the railroad manager has properly performed the test observation, recognizing the employee compliance with the following procedures contained with the railroad operational testing program, correct and record of deficiency. By the same token, non-compliance with the railroad operational safety and federal regulations is not recorded by the inspector as defects in the inspection report. They should be recorded as comments to the railroad on the inspection provided with the railroad manager and properly set up the test and observation, recognizing that each of the employee non-compliance filed with the procedure maintained in the railroad operational testing program. Hence, safe harbor is provided by the railroad manager and railroad itself. To summarize, the safe harbor principle applies only to the 217 inspection activity only when the railroad manager properly sets up the testing observation, recognizes the employee non-compliance follows the procedures contained with the railroad operational testing program to correct and record the deficiency. If those criteria are not fulfilled during the 217 inspection, the inspector should follow the normal procedure to record the defects when the appropriate recommendation, civil penalties. Additionally, the inspector has the obligation to review the copy of the railroad manager's records, and after the operational testing has been entered in the railroad electronic record keeping, if the inspector determines the railroad manager failed with the property record, failed to properly record all the deficiency taken, the inspector must complete the inspector record report indicator failures. The inspector report must record the manager's failure to comply with the railroad's operational testing program for each of the testing records that were improperly entered when the manager failed to enter. Examples of the application of safe harbor policy. Example 1. Inspector is riding in the vehicle and the railroad manager performing an operational testing session. The inspector sees the railroad employee standing on the rail, but the manager does not see it. She does not see it. Action to be taken. The inspector of the railroad manager intervene as required by the FRA intervention policy. The FRA general manual discusses the rules of non-compliance with the employee. The FRA inspector must record the non-FRA defective in the narrative note the observed with the inspector activity code 217.0 and that the railroad manager did not make the observation during the testing session. Example 2. An inspector is riding in the vehicle with the road manager during an operational testing session. The observant and employee failing to properly protect with the shoving movement. When the inspector brings the noncompliance into the attention of the railroad or the manager does nothing about it, the inspector insists to be allowed to intervene regarding the unsafe act. Actions to be taken. The inspector should record the unsafe act as a de facto violation. The inspector should also record the defect violation for the manager not following the railroad operational testing program when he or she is ignored by the compliance with the intervening unsafe act. Suggested 217 inspection report regarding the safe harbor policy description comment to the railroad company's 217 activity code. After job briefing including the FRA safety harbor policy, the FRA policy prohibiting inspectors from existing the operational testing discussion, the location type of the test, and to be included in the session. Managers conduct with the following operational test as the location of the Tango that could be conducted operational 11B on the crew operating locomotive Nebraska 22/12:45 p.m. The crew manager is testing the crew acted with in accordance with the railroad operating test program current on the file with the FRA with the manager's employees. I observed the performed very well. Description non-FRA defectives 217.0 and 217T activity codes while accompanying of the railroad manager operational testing session. Exemption during the operational testing session. I observed an employee standing on the rail at the north end of track 6 located in the boneyard at 3 p.m. The manager Jones and immediately intervened with the address to the compliance with the testing officers accompanying me and did not see compliance with consequently not recorded the observation in their operational testing records. The FRA notes that the railroad manager did not correctly intervene when they brought with non-compliance with it to their intention. Description comment of the Railroad 217 activity. I accompanied the RR officials A. Smith Division Train Master B. Smith and Terminal D and D session with D. Smith Road Foreman, Mrs. Smith Road Foreman, M. Smith Road Foreman, G. Smith Road Foreman, A joint testing session will perform the test and inspection pursuant to the program under the titles 49 CFR Part 217 on XYZZ Centerville subdivision between the Centerville Springfield. The testing session started with 8 a.m. and ended at 1 p.m. The XYZZ FRA team conducted the job briefing beginning with the end of the test, and the XYZZ FRA team observed the XYZZ train stop on test 1233 block signal. Stop proceed, then stop at the test in 1234 stop banner trains. The XYZZ train for FRI team observed the XYZZ train stops the test 1235 block stop and signal proceed. Observed the XYZZ testing, recording the testing failure. XYZZ train XX for note whistling the Centerville US dot 123456X near the Centerville and the milepost 52 accordance with the hour test number the 1236 whistle signal and grade crossing. Single shedding precautions while observing the 217 operational testing session. It is uncommon for the FRA operational practice inspector to come up with the railroad manager when shut eye signals to become an operational testing inspection required with the Title 49 CFR Part 217. The information set for the fourth below to make the inspector aware of what can happen when the silent shutting the various types of the signal systems. The FRA operational practice should familiarize himself with the information most asks the railroad manager if they have been qualified by the railroad to shunt a signal system. If the inspector or doubt, and the testing manager should be made aware of the concern, and the inspector should end the observation of their operational testing method and advise the appropriate higher level rating the operating and manager. There are at least 50 different signal circuits designed in the U.S. of this country today, some of the old, new, and some mix of both. So depending on the circumstance, certain testing could be viewed as an interference with might and by the violation of FRA regulations. Section 236.4 prohibits interference with the signal system in the testing. Otherwise, unless measure the taken as safety of the train moves, placing on the shutdown and dumping the signal in the face of the train, interference with the performed railroad employee subject to the railroad monetary penalties, employing the individual liability. The testing of the design single system needs to dictate the shunting procedure is used, handling the issue case by case of the local signal personnel is best approach. Single systems are not designed to drop or fly in a train into them, and the exact what the employee attempting to do when he or she shunts the track or circuit. Operational testing inspection checklist. The inspector should review all the data relevant to the required prior to the 217T in session. All the 217 sessions begin with the briefing regarding the FRA safety harbor policy. Note the inspection reporting of the briefing. Ensure the railroad managers include the preparation of the operational testing of the proper safety briefing will include the FRA inspector. Ensure the railroad managers understand the inspection of the prohibited but the being involved with the operational testing itself. The inspector is therefore only the monitor of the test. The inspector for purposes to verify the tests are done in accordance with the railroad's own program to determine whether the tests are provided in accordance with the federal guidelines of the railroad operating rules. Ask the railroad managers involved with the train and operational testing about the briefing performed. Inspectors have the reason to doubt the qualification of the railroad manager's training records should be reviewed. Conclude all 217 sessions with the briefing regarding exactly what will be recorded with the railroad operating testing records, including the tests were conducted and if failures occurred. If the briefing is short, description of the contents should be included in the inspection report, including exactly what the test will be recorded by the railroad manager's company. All the 217 inspections with the prior 217P inspection report and include the review of the operational testing program, operational testing data, non-FRA report, as well as the FRA reportable accident injuries. The inspector should reference the previous inspection with the file number of the current inspection. Include all 217 inspections of the review operational testing record and indicated with the operational testing conducted with the presence of the FRA inspector were recorded properly. If the inspection performed on a later date, the inspector should include the 217 inspection report number of the inspection report file number box. 217's P, inspection data analysis normalization. Inspection should be an authorable reference in Chapter 18. 217P, reliance almost any of the review operational testing data should only be attempted only after reviewing the focused inspection process charting of the found in Chapter 18 of this manual. After complete analysis of the focused inspection process data, and an inspector must accurately narrow and size The scope of the operational testing records to be reviewed. The board review of the railroad's operational testing records without narrowing scope of the review likely have limited, unreliable conclusions. In addition, limited size of the scope of the 217 inspection will bring credibility to the documentation of the inspector analysis. Reviewing operational testing is not exactly science within science. Consequently, 217P analysis should have limited influences when considering violation when recorded deficiencies unless strongly supported by the charted but not above. The 217P analysis is best used to identify the root of the cause and assist the gain in compliance with reducing accidents and injuries. Analyzing operational data in the foundation of all FRA operational practice inspections can be linked to almost any bona fide effort of bringing with the railroad in compliance to almost any successful effort to significantly reduce the number of the accidents incidents of the inspector territory will include the using the railroad operational practice operational training testing. Normalizing collecting gathered data for the focus inspection. Normalizing is acting as normalization is an act adjusting the accuracy to similar measurements of the imposing attributes that are common. For example, the FRA normalizes accident data imposing a million-mile train mile standard across the railway industry injury data imposing 200,000 man-hour standards. Normalization becomes a signification issue of the inspector in trying to complete the railroad data with the FRA data, the defects in the measurement of the collected in the chart differentially. The best way to overcome the obstacle, normalize the differences, and how to become how the data in this recorded and collected. This will give the inspector common ground from which the established professional communications of the railroad managers. Example 1, tracking 217P. The inspector has to track railroad operational testing results in a 6-month period, and this is the location of the majority of the accident injuries. FRA defects documented with the night and out on the weekend. Big Red subdivision operational testing totals. The Big Red subdivision, the Panhandle subdivision. Examples: find the number of at least tests that appeared to performed at night of the weekend. Night crews were tested. Operational test 207, shoving and movements, and 0 crews were tested on Sunday. Shoving movements were highest in the on the HF incident accident issue. The location 75% of the incident happened on Sunday. On priority Z, the train crew tested 2 Z trains were included with the accountability accident. 1 May 11, 2000, such a year. There was simultaneously recorded testing, efficiency testing 201 and 207. All right, example 2, tracking the 217P data is displayed on the following chart. Railroad managers conducted 1,018 tests in the first quarter of 2008, 774 tests in the second quarter of 2008. The testing was reduced to 24% in the second quarter when compared with the first quarter. The 2 additional injuries, second quarter and third additional human factor causes the accidents in the second quarter. This shows the testing of the first half of the support with the first and second quarters. Using operational testing and obtaining compliance whenever the inspector is identified with the trending of non-compliance within his or her territory, typically documented with the data in the focus inspection process. The inspector should ensure that the railroad using the operational testing to improve the compliance or add to and identify the accident trends. Example, the using operational testing identified with the using the root cause of obtaining the compliance with the operational field. The inspector has found serious non-compliance regarding with the railroad employees leaving the equipment in the foul prior to the line and the switch. The FRA inspector has prior towards the analyzed charting the focus inspection process data to determine the root cause. After the view of the focus inspection charting, the comprehensive view of the specific operational testing records directed with improving the compliance regarding the equipment in the foul. Inspector has revealed the following: the manager is unaware of the operational testing that are conducted with the effect of obtaining the compliance with the equipment of the foul. Location of the 4 receptacle accidents recorded in the last 18 months that show the cost of the code for equipment in the foul. The FRA inspection indication of the non-compliance is a current issue. A high number of the accountable records include the equipment in the foul. The number of operational testing required regarding equipment in the foul extremely high, but in compliance with low. It indicates that there is a problem with the manager's operational testing techniques. Interview with the managers determine the testing session has reviewed that the railroad managers does not understand the testing requirements and operational rule regarding the equipment in the foul. Interviews with the railroad crews revealed that they did not understand the operating of the rules, federal regulations regarding the equipment left standing in the foul. Operational testing regarding equipment in the foul did not correlate with all the time locations once a day of the week. The record accidents occurred involved with the equipment in the fouls. 9 several operational testing failures did not have any of the following upsetting. Conducting the manager of the railroad has only slightly amended with the operational testing program to address the trends regarding the equipment in the foul. Guidance. Violation regarding 217P. A violation report of the operational testing record must include the railroad operational practice the railroad operational testing records. Inspectors should request the railroad designated with the representative provided with the official records when recording the non-compliance. Onboard train inspection. Train riding inspection should be conducted in a manner that will not be disruptive to the operational primary purpose of the FRA inspector. Onboard inspection is to evaluate the compliance with the federal safety standards, railway operating rules by the railroad employees. Avoiding disruption and operations. Railroads have expressed the concern with the FRA inspector presence with the cab district and the train crew operating the operational practice believes the genuine sense concern with the inspector should cognizant on whether the on board of the train when on board a train. Any conversation with the train crew while on board the train should be minimal. The FRA inspection should refrain the saying doing anything that might distract the crew from the duties. The FRA does not intend for the inspector to offer the criticism and he is asked questions. Offer advice to the crews when performing the duties. If the crew member does not violate or is about to violate a federal regulation, it is an inspector's responsibility to inform the crew member of the requirements of federal regulation in the manner that is above, and all safety, professional and safety is first and foremost concern. Advance notice on onboard train inspection. FRA equipment is not required to provide an advanced inspection note intended to conduct the inspection. Train inspection. The FRA will not conduct any railroad setting precondition agency ability to the response to perform an onboard inspection. Nonetheless, the FRA inspector may provide a railroad notice in his or her intent of the railroad inspection. The inspector feels that appropriate to the beneficial. If the inspector decides to provide the railroad in advance notice of his or her intent to ride a train because the railroad has a policy that the railroad manager will accompany the inspector during an onboard train inspection, the FRA will consider the courtesy as of the railroad, but is not mandatory for the inspections. Or preparation for an onboard train inspection, consideration selecting the train route, looking at a high number of the recently promoted engineers and train service employees, look at a recent increase of the business and change operation, look at the major track maintenance projects, heavy grade operations, other unusual operation conditions, try to vary the types of the train you ride, work trains local, have the interaction with the dispatcher train crews with the train, typically have more than activity of the train crews than the freight trains. There will be opportunities in SOFA and special switch handling, observation riding of the yard train, remotely controlled locomotives, locomotive freight, and industry switch. Conduction of the onboard train inspection. Introduce yourself with the train crew members upon your arrival. Identify yourself either with the credentials or with the business card. Inform the crew that you will be monitoring the radio communication for the purpose of the radio with compliance. Check the crew to ensure that you all have safety equipment that you will need to accompany them on the same train ride. Explain to the crew that you will not be calling out signals, explaining them to why. Explain to them why. See this next section. Ensure that you're involved in any job safety briefing that could affect. Check the locomotive engineering certificate. Make sure the engineer is qualified on the territory to be operated over. Per Part 220, the railroad communication, make sure the conductor engineer have the written copy of the mandatory directives. Request copy of the mandatory directives. However, there is no federal requirement that the railroad provide you with a copy. The crew chamber. Check the crew member's possession of the required operating rule book, safety rules, and air brake and train handling rules. Current applicability timetables for the territory. Some of them may be operated with a joint trackage right territory. If the crew member is required to know the latest general order, to have the general orders in the possession known as the safety rule of the day, then check the compliance with the railroad requirements, check the daily locomotive records for the compliance, observe the crew of the rules, compliance with the railroad operating safety rules and federal law regulations, including the use of the record, record personal safety equipment, inspection, locomotive safety device evidence, and tampering. Make observation on whether the crew member makes a required speed indicator test as soon as possible after departure. Means of speed testing section of equivalent procedures. At the end of the trip, discuss the things that went well with the compliant with the crew on their professional. Discuss the crew of the deficiencies and/or violations. Inform the crew of exactly what will the inspection report regarding with the behavior. Identifying the manager who will receive the copy of the report and complete your inspection report. Call signals when performing onboard train rides. Inspectors forbidden to call signals on the crew members to the crew members. The FRA inspector roles in and observe the inspector should never participate in accepting in this activities construed the duties of the crew member operating the locomotive operating switches calling signals. During the safety job briefing held by the priority on-the-job train ride, the inspector should explain the policy of the crew. The FRA continue will accept the train crew to comply with their operating rules regardless of the FRA presence. The inspector should explain the purpose of the inspection, monitoring compliance, not participating in a member of the crew subject themselves. Crew operating decision, recording and train rides on the 96 report. The active duty includes the operational practice inspectors riding on any type of the track geometry equipment. Inspectors should be governed with the suggestion of the current train ride checklist and record all the activities when applicable. Recording data found during the onboard training device 217R, 217X, 217L. The following procedures are intended to allow the FRA Office of the Railroad Safety to analyze the quantify the non-compliance with federal regulation of the ROR or rail safety rules, observe the record of during the freight trains onboard inspection 270R, and record control operations 217L and passenger train onboard inspection 217X. Procedures. Inspectors conducting onboard inspections must include the following additional information: the train number, site box, and the F61896 inspection report item, entering the applicable operation code, activity code 217R, 217L, 217X, and the inspection of the report header, record, in unusual manner item defects observed during the onboard inspection covered the activities of 218.0, 222.40, 222.0, and RPW, working road worker protection, etc. In addition, with the line item defects of the observed during the onboard inspection must be identified by placing the appropriate onboard activity 217R, 217L, 217X in the number of the train site block for the line item on the board. Inspection reports on the cover of the inspection designated the day of the train riding per day period must include the letters of the onboard inspection OBI, the file number, the number of the box at the top on the file S61896 inspection report. The file number is only the FRA copy of the inspection. Train ride checklist. The train ride checklist listed before similar check may be used during the train ride activities. Information contained in the form of the use of the completing with the inspection report at the end of each of the train ride. The crew change the train ride checklist containing essential information, including the inspection report. See example of the page as follows. This shows an onboard and train inspection, name, date, hours, certificate, job briefing, tampering, yard limits, daily locomotive inspection, air brake inspection, rules of the day, warrants, bulletin checks, authorized limits, hazardous placement, paperwork, proper additives, proper whistleblower use, mark at the end of the train display, GOSTTIT rules, personal safety equipment restrictions, highlight calling signals, road worker protection, inspecting passengers, cell phone off, secured equipment when required, wired secure equipment when required. This is a passenger train riding inspection, a name on duty, start time, special cars, personal electronic device, rule book, PPE, job briefing, locomotive safety standards, your rule of the day, bulletins check, equipment restriction, daily locomotive inspection, Class 1 and Class 1A, Class 1-2 brake test, running brake test, restricted speed, flashlight mediated equipment, non-left following, protection shoves, engine horn, walking to and from equipment, radio compliance, engine horn, properly headlight display, call signals, post-trip, secure equipment when required, and district crew. District inspection, dispatcher inspection. The main item of the distinguished one-day inspection for the multiple day 217D inspection. Dispatcher audit. The later is intended to be approximately 2-day audit of the small regional office of the signal and operation practice inspector. Note that a dispatcher team audit, however, the inspector can get down in the list of depending on the size of the scope of the operation. The scope of the dispatcher desk inspection should include night shifts, weekend shifts, so that the inspectors observe less experienced dispatcher who have less seniority, usually while the found working with the off hours. Dispatcher inspection should be planned to account with the size of the file side of the railroad operation. First day conducting the dispatcher desk observation. 6. Sit with at least one dispatcher on the day, afternoon, night shift for about 1 to 4 hours and perform the following observations. Monitoring radio observation with compliance with the rules, proper blocking and applied with the central traffic control, traffic warranting control, computer screens when the track and type and authority is applied, checking the electronic train sheet or paper train sheets, check the track warranting bulletins noting whether they are issued or avoided only where there is breaking action, discuss any of the current dispatcher if the practical, and interview special dispatcher to discuss the current issue related. Second day, perform a 217P inspection of the dispatcher operational testing, check the Part 217 operational applicable testing records for compliance with the carrier's 217 plan, check the ensuring the 217 records compare favorably with the viewed on the previous day, the second dispatcher train record for compliance with 217-239 if applicable. Regional inspection points. Inspectors are required to maintain a proper record of the regional inspection points. This information shall be in the minimum consist of the following: the number of the railroad manager for the inspected territory, the number of the railroad crews operating within the inspected territory, the number of the railroad dispatchers operating in the inspected territory, and for the number of the railroad crews operating within the inspector's territory. Hazardous material inspection. Before using the following information on how to properly record the inspection of the train consisting of the information of the hazardous material codes, the inspector should make sure that the regional specialists are aware of the inspector are using the activity codes. The inspector should be governed with his or her region. Make sure the hazmat inspection are required in the inspection region and the information provided with it is presented and assist the understanding of are not instructions. However, there may be benefit that the conducting a large number of the train ride. Alright, on-train inspection hazardous material. The inspector should ask if the train consists of the paperwork, look at the description on the train, consist if they are accurately complete. Sometimes the crew has extra copy. If the opportunity presents itself, drive the length of the train, check it to see if it is listed accurately. When all the locomotive in the train, check the train placement violation on number 96. Well, there will be 3 numbered items of the train inspected, but the train can consist of hazmat description. Each description will unit count. In statute 174.26, each description will unit count. Consist accuracy, including the missing cars, extra cars, and 17.24 on 74.26a. Each train is a unit count. Train placement in section statute 174 and 85, a train is a unit count. If for some reason the inspector cannot weigh the driven the length of the train, he or she can only the train take credit for the inspection description of the train placement, but he would not be able to check for the consistent accuracy. If the inspector finds the train placement defective, violation of the hazmat car in the train that is not on the list, picture of the company and the deficiency is preferred. Alright, recording hazard material inspection on 96th report. Railroad operations RRO. Railroad operations is the locator and if put a hazmat on the 96 report, first enter the railroad operations with the 1 unit. Activity to the code 172 that has the shipping description of the same consistent each of the hazardous material and the train having the proper description. An example of the liquefied petroleum gas class 21 UN 1075. Usually the description of each of the tank and intermodal train, however that could be the hazmat description of each of the container. Activity codes 174B, the 17 statute 174.26a. The transit consistent inspection or inspector gets one of the unit of each train consisting inspected. If one car shows that is listed actually missing from the train, all hazmat cars shown on the list from that point to the rear of the train are off by one in violation. By one in violation. They may have 50 hazmat cars and usually on only except for the violation defective consist. Activity codes TPLH or statute 174.85 in the train placement hazard cars. Generally, each of the loaded flat car tanker car must be at least six deep in the train behind the locomotive at the head of the occupied or ahead of the occupied caboose. Generally, as each residual flat car tank car must not enclosure of the second behind the locomotive is ahead of the caboose. There are some very exceptions to the regulation. The inspector must be aware of the train placement regulations do not apply to the tanker car. The train placement regulations do not apply to tanker cars loaded with residual containing combustible liquid, class 9 liquid or class 6.1 packing group group 3 liquid. Combustible flat car tanker is the train located in the next locomotive. This is perfectly legal. A class 6.1 tanker car is the train, and the inspector should look at the shipping description of the train consisting to see if the group 3, if the class 6.1 packing group with 1 or 2 and subject to all the train's placement regulations. If the class 6.1 packing group of 3 is not subject to any of the train placement regulation, Another very important exemption of the TPLH is when the length of the train will not permit the load of the loaded flat car tanker car to be buried 6 deep. This must be placed in the middle of the train, but in case of the very short train, the loaded tanker car must never be closer than the second car to the train. If the ethanol train consists of 50 loaded flammable placard tanker cars, and only one buffer would be needed to be between the locomotives and the first ethanol tanker car, all 50 tanker cars considered in the middle of the train. Emergency Order. Section 20104 of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code gives the Secretary of the Transportation the authority to issue the railway safety emergency orders without providing prior notice for the operational. For the comment, the Secretary has delegated the authority of the Administrator of the FRA, particularly for the Administrator to decide on the basis of testing, inspection, investigation, research of the railway safety laws, the unsafe condition of the practice, combination of the unsafe condition of the practice, cause of the emergency situation involving hazardous death, personal injury, significant harm to the environment of the Administrator may, under the order, restriction, prohibitions necessary to abate the situation. The emergency order involves the unsafe conditions, the procedures of Title 49 CFR 216.21. 216.216.27 should be consulted. An emergency order published from the Federal Registry, provided with the effective date, time, and the parties are subject to an order. Emergency order to be determined with the cause of the emergency situation prescribed in the procedures for obtaining relief from the orders. Emergency orders are subject to the review of the administrative. And see the procedures, Title 49 CFR 211-47, 211-71 through 11-77. The appropriate U.S. Court of Appeals of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 20104B, 20114C. Also note the under the Title for U.S. 49 U.S. Standard Code 20104C, an employee of the railroad car engaged in the interstate of the foreign commerce will be exposed to the imminent physical injury during the employee because of the secretary failure. Without any reasonable basis, the issue is an emergency order may file a lawsuit to issue an emergency order to may file a lawsuit in the U.S. District to comply with the FRA to issue the emergency order. Once an emergency order is issued, it is still in effect in field inspections by the discipline. The discipline is assigned to enforce the emergency order, but become priority. The regional managers will create an enforcement plan in the emergency order to issue the specific instructions to the field inspector of responsibility enforcement of the emergency order. If an emergency order resigns, notice for the fact that usually published in the Federal Register, e.g. Federal Register 59580, September 27, 2010, and residing emergency order number 26, effective March 28, 2011. And that concludes chapter 19.